Criminal Cruel Summer, written by Ed Brubaker, art by Sean Phillips. Alright, Criminal Cruel Summer, the final volume. Next week, I will be moving on to a new series, and that will be Neil Gaiman's Sandman, an all-time classic, must-read to all serious comic readers. It is a great one, although it's maybe not for everyone. It's a little bit weird and trippy and avant-garde, but I think it's worth at least given a chance to, so I will be starting that very soon. But here we have the final volume of Criminal Cruel Summer. Every volume has kind of been building to this particular storyline. A lot of the previous Criminal volumes have been relatively self-contained. Well, this final volume really rewards you the most if you've been following this series throughout its entire run, because there's lots of callbacks to previous issues and plot threads from previous issues, and we really get all the characters kind of thrown in here, or at least a lot of them. So we have Jacob Kurtz, Leo Patterson, Teeg Lawless, and Ricky Lawless, and we kind of see them all in the early days. We have a real exploration of the relationship between Teeg and Ricky, and we can kind of contrast that with the relationship between Teeg and Tracy we saw in Volume 7, so see how he treats the other son. And in this volume, we will finally get to see Teeg Lawless's death. His death has been often hyped up, and it has been mentioned in previous volumes, where we're finally going to get to see it go down, and it's going to be a pretty exciting thing. Alright, let's dive into it. The final volume of Criminal Cruel Summer. Before I dive into the story, I want to refresh you all on the criminal timeline. So, Teeg Lawless, he died in 1988. Leo Patterson killed Teeg, but his dad, Tommy Patterson, took the blame and went to jail for it. This was all briefly mentioned in the first few volumes of Criminal. Tommy Patterson was then killed in prison in 1991. He was shanked in the showers. This volume all heavily revolves around Teeg Lawless's death. Issue 1 begins in March of 1988. We see a young, 16-year-old Ricky Lawless. Ricky Lawless is the son of Teeg Lawless and the brother of Tracy Lawless. Ricky, he breaks into an old house, thinking it's abandoned, and he is rifling through it to find some valuables. He is interrupted by an old man nicknamed Mac the Monster. Mac has a little bit of dementia though, and he thinks Ricky is his grandson named Philip. Mac sees Ricky and asks, "Philip, is that you, boy?" Ricky replies, "Hey, Grandpa." Mac the Monster asks Ricky, "Were you looking for my necklace?" And Ricky answers, "I just wanted to see it again." Mac, he gets angry and he tells Ricky, "I told you and your sister you're not to go into my desk." Ricky asks, "Can you tell me about it again, Grandpa?" Mac, he sits down and says, "Alright." He opens the desk drawer and takes out the shiniest diamond emerald necklace Ricky has ever seen. And Mac begins to tell Ricky the story of how he got it. Back in Tokyo in 1954, Mac was over there on a wrestling circuit with his old friend named Sal, otherwise known as Sal, the Demon of New Orleans. They were both wrestlers and were making pretty good money. They were minor celebrities over there even. They stayed at fancy hotels and had all the women and booze they could handle. Eventually, Sal came up with this idea though to rob this jewelry store. He had the simplest plan possible. See, they were staying in this fancy hotel, and wealthy guests of the hotel could ask for a private viewing of this jewelry store's gems. So, Sal and his girlfriend had the clerk of the jewelry store bring a briefcase of diamonds and various jewels up to their room. This way, the wealthy guest could shop in privacy. Well, the plan was when the jewelry clerk got up to their room, they would give him a drink and they would drug it and make the clerk pass out. They would take the diamonds and the various jewels, and they would immediately leave Japan and fly back to the United States. Only problem was something went wrong. The drugs didn't work. Sal, he went crazy and he beat the clerk half to death with a pistol whipping him. There was a 3-day manhunt for Sal, and eventually he was arrested by the Japanese police. But Mac the Monster, he ended up flying back to the US with that diamond necklace as well as tons of other jewelry. Mac, he had to give a piece to the Yakuza to get out of Tokyo. He also had to give a small cut to the mob in America, but he made off okay. And Sal got out of prison in 1963 and came back to America for his half. And he bought a farm with it and was never really heard from again. Mac, he is reminiscing about this heist more to Ricky. The diamond necklace that he has right there is the only piece from that heist he didn't sell. Ricky, he grabs that necklace, he's looking at it, and Mac yells, "Nobody touches that! You know the rules!" And Mac, he lunges to strangle Ricky, and Ricky, he's being strangled by this old man. And in the commotion, they begin fighting, and Ricky, he grabs an ashtray on the desk and whacks Mac in the head with it, and Mac, he falls down. Ricky, he then stomps him a bit, and he takes off with the necklace. When Ricky is outside, his friend, Leo Patterson, is waiting for him. Leo Patterson is Ricky's best friend. Leo Patterson is a major character we've seen in other volumes of Criminal. Most prominently, he was featured in the Volume 1 storyline, Coward. While Leo and Ricky, they head across town to a pawn shop and try and sell the necklace to the pawn clerk, who's a red-headed woman named Frankie. Frankie, she's skeptical. She figures that Ricky and Leo stole this necklace. She warns them that there are people you should not mess with. Ricky says, though, he needs the money for his dad's bail. Frankie concedes and agrees to buy the necklace off of them. Later on, down at the jail, Teeg Lawless gets out of prison on the bail that Ricky paid, and Teeg goes outside and finds Ricky waiting for him. They share a smoke together. At this point in time, Ricky's mom, Angela Lawless, has been dead for about 9 years, and Ricky's brother, Tracy Lawless, is away with the military, so it's just Ricky and Teeg against the world. Teeg, he's kind of impressed with Ricky, getting the money to bail him out. He thinks the two of them should go for some breakfast. But then, it hits Teeg. Where did Ricky get the money for his bail? 5 days later, Teeg, he did not like the answer for where the money came from. And when he found out what Ricky did, he beat Ricky half to death. He broke his arm. Ricky, he messed up huge when he robbed that old man. That old man, Mac the Monster, was a connected guy. Teeg, he goes to the Undertow bar. We see Gnarly Brown is still there, tending bar. Teeg, he talks to Sebastian Hyde, the big crime kingpin in the city. At this point in the Criminal series, we've seen young Sebastian Hyde, old Sebastian Hyde, well now we get to see middle-aged Sebastian Hyde, just in the beginning stages of getting fatter and his hair thinning. Teeg Lawless is here to talk to Sebastian and make amends for Ricky's screw-up. Mac the Monster was one of Sebastian Hyde's dad's best friends. Sebastian tells Teeg that this was a major transgression by Ricky. Sebastian tells Teeg that he'll make him a deal though, for old time's sake. Ricky has to return the necklace to Mac and apologize, and he better mean it. Teeg says, oh, he will, Sebastian continues. Then there is that $5,000 that Frankie paid Ricky. That has to be repaid. And then let's throw on 20 grand for Mac's pain and suffering. Teeg is surprised. 25 grand? Sebastian tells Teeg that he has 2 weeks to come up with the money, or Sebastian's men over there will bash Ricky's head in. Teeg asks if he can just work it off. Sebastian says those days are through. Teeg has 2 weeks to come up with the money. Teeg, he goes home, he drinks and broods for a few days. Then he phones some old friends and see if they have any jobs planned that he can get in on. Teeg finds out, though, one of his old colleagues, A man named Arvin Burns is dead. He died recently, and the funeral was very soon. Teeg decides, even though he has a lot going on, to drive into the city for the funeral. Him and Arvin went way back. They were good friends, more like brothers, and they pulled many scores together. Arvin was usually the brain of the operation, and thieves like Arvin were someone you could really rely on. And now he was gone, just like that. Teeg couldn't believe that Arvin just died of a heart attack at the age of 45. Arvin was even a few years younger than Teeg, and Teeg felt like he was really getting on in years. Teeg drives to see a woman named Sharon. Teeg and Sharon seem to be old friends. Sharon was the first wife of Teeg's now dead friend, Arvin Burns. They divorced at some point, though, many years ago. Sharon is surprised, but pleased to see Teeg. She lets him inside her home. They reminisce. She shares how Arvin apparently died. Arvin, he was downtown in his car at like 5 a.m., across the street from some hardware store. He was just parked there, and then he died of a heart attack, while the key was still in the ignition in the car. Teeg comments about how her and Arvin looked like they had a really good relationship. But Sharon, she shares some stories about how rough it got between the two of them near the end, how they really started to dislike each other and get under each other's skin. The two of them end up sharing a bed together that night, and they have sex. The next day was the funeral. At the funeral, Teeg is looking at everyone else that's there, and he's pretty sure that Arvin hated most of these people. The funeral attendees afterwards went to a bar, and Teeg is listening to them all talk and share stories about Arvin. Teeg overhears one of those stories. A guy says that Arvin stole something for him, and he paid Arvin $100,000 for it. Teeg interrupts and says, "Did you say 100,000?" And the guy confirms and says, "Yeah, why?" And Teeg, he worked that job with Arvin, and Arvin told him they were only getting 40 grand for that job. Teeg can't believe his supposed best friend lied to him and pocketed that extra money. The guy responds to Teeg, "I don't know what to tell you. I guess Arvin could be a real cheat sometimes." Teeg, he gets angry and punches the guy in the face, and then a bar fight breaks out, and Teeg, he takes some bad blows, and by the end of the night, Teeg, he is back at the cemetery, and he is now pissing on Arvin's grave. Teeg's angry. $30,000? That's how much Arvin stole from me? How many other times did he screw me out of my end of the cut? Teeg, he starts kicking the grave, and he eventually settles down, though, and starts smoking after he wears himself out. Teeg, he then remembers that Arvin apparently died in his car, parked across the street from a hardware store at like 5 a.m.? What the hell was Arvin doing there at 5 a.m.? Teeg thinks that maybe Arvin was staking out a potential score? Teeg, he drives to that hardware store to see what's up, and Teeg eventually sees a long line of Mexicans, day laborers, migrants, etc., and they're starting to line up across the street. There must have been 100 of them. Eventually, a truck drives up from a local farm. It has 2 armed men in the back, and they stand guard while another man hands out a week's worth of pay to all the seasonal laborers here. Teeg realizes that they're all being paid in cash. Teeg, he has now found his quick score to help him get that 25 grand he needs to give Sebastian Hyde for Ricky's screw-up. Next week, he'll gather a few guys and they'll rob this truck. It was gonna be so easy. Teeg, he sits in that car smoking. Maybe things have finally started turning around for him. Little did Teeg know, though, that things were about to change for him. In a few months, he would fall in love for the first time in his life. And by next summer, he'd be dead, his brains splattered across a wall. But Teeg, he didn't know any of that. Right now, he was just a man making a plan and counting money in his head. That is the end of issue 1, and some things to note before we move on, because the next few issues jump around in time a little bit. We will never actually get to see this particular robbery getting pulled off in later issues. It never gets mentioned again. We just pick up the story in the future later, so we just have to assume that Teeg successfully pulled off the robbery, and he managed to come up with that 25 grand and square everything. I remember when I was reading Criminal as it was coming out, I was so annoyed that we never returned to this plot thread. And as subsequent issues kept coming, I kept wondering, when are we going to return to this? Are we going to return to this? So anyway, know that we will not be returning to this plot thread, but Teeg, he successfully pulled this off. One other thing important to note is that Brubaker outright tells us here and reminds us that Teeg Lawless will die soon in the future. If you've been paying attention closely to the past Criminal volumes, especially Volume 1, we know that Teeg gets killed in 1988, and since the story's taking place in 1988, we know that we are in the final stretch, building up to the storyline that will eventually reveal Teeg Lawless's death. Now I am skipping issues 2 and 3 because they are actually the Bad Weekend storyline, which I've covered in my last video, and they are unrelated to the overall story in this Cruel Summer volume. So the next issue is issue 4, Orphans. This issue jumps ahead in time to March of 1993, 5 years later. Teeg Lawless would now be dead by this point in time. This issue is just showcasing to us the further deterioration of Ricky Lawless. Ricky Lawless, he's now 21 years old at this point, and he is all hyped up on crystal meth, and he's been awake for 5 days. Ricky, he's in this automotive shop in this garage, and he's super paranoid. A guy named Finn arrives. Ricky has been expecting him. Finn thinks that they're here to talk about some job, but Ricky just quickly whacks him with a baseball bat and knocks him unconscious and handcuffs him and gags him. Ricky then drives across town to see his ex-girlfriend, Jenny Waters. We've seen Jenny in other volumes of Criminal. In the future, she becomes a cop working for Internal Affairs. Well, when she sees Ricky right now, she is not pleased to see him. She can also tell that he's super high. Ricky asks for her help. He needs to find Leo Patterson. Jenny says that Ricky should just leave Leo alone. Ricky says that he needs to make things right between the two of them. He's trying to fix things. Jenny eventually agrees to help him find Leo's new address. Ricky and Leo apparently had a falling out and haven't seen each other for 2 years or so. Jenny and Ricky, they head to the Undertow bar. Jenny drives because Ricky is too tweaked out for Jenny's liking. Ricky, he's apparently banned from the Undertow bar for some previous past behavior. But he sneaks in with Jenny though, and he sits quietly in the corner while Jenny goes and talks to Gnarly Brown and tries to get Leo's new address out of him. Eventually, Gnarly tells her what she wants. Now while she's talking to Gnarly, Ricky, he's waiting at the other end of the bar. He's smoking. He sees a man that he thinks is his dad, Teeg Lawless, walking into the men's room. Ricky, he walks in after him, and he sees Teeg there. And Teeg turns around, and half his face is missing from being blown off from a gun blast. It's of course not Ricky's dad, though. Perhaps Ricky was just tripping from all the drugs. The guy that Ricky mistook for his dad turns around and says to Ricky, "What the hell are you looking at? Back off, bitch!" Ricky punches the guy in the face, and the guy punches Ricky back and knocks Ricky out. Eventually, when Ricky wakes up, Gnarly and Jenny are standing over him. Gnarly asks Ricky if he's alive enough to walk out of here. Ricky says yes. Gnarly tells him then get the hell out of here. Jenny apologizes to Gnarly, and Gnarly tells her to not bring him around here again. Jenny, she then drives Ricky to Leo Patterson's new house. Ricky knocks on the door, but Leo is not home right now. Ricky says he's gonna wait here for Leo to come back. Jenny says that she's gotta go to work soon, so what is Ricky gonna do? Ricky tells her that she can take the truck they were driving, just wipe it down and toss the keys when you dump it. Jenny realizes that the truck they were driving was stolen, and she tells Ricky, "Jesus Christ, you asshole! She was driving around a stolen truck and she didn't even know it?" Jenny, she leaves, and Ricky, he waits there. Ricky, he managed to sleep a bit, and in the morning, Leo Patterson comes back to his home to find Ricky waiting for him. Leo is not happy to see Ricky. He asks him, "Why are you here?" And Ricky says, "I've got this job lined up. I thought you might want in." Leo does not want in. Ricky tells Leo there's another reason he's here. Ricky tells Leo, "I got one of the guys that killed your dad." And Leo pauses. "What do you mean, got him?" And Ricky says, "I mean, I have him chained up across town." Leo tells Ricky, "No one asked you to do that, man." Ricky answers, "I know, but I already did it. So you want to at least talk to the guy?" See, Leo Patterson's dad, Tommy Patterson, died in prison a year or two earlier. He was shanked in the showers. Well, Ricky apparently tracked down one of the supposed killers. The two of them drive across town back to that garage where Ricky has this Finn guy tied up who was supposedly responsible for killing Tommy Patterson, Leo's dad. As Ricky and Leo arrive in the garage, this Finn guy is dead. Ricky hit the guy way too hard with the baseball bat. Leo asks Ricky, "How are you even sure he was one of them?" And Ricky answers that Sebastian Hyde sold me his name. He was part of a gang up there in that prison. I checked it out. Leo is skeptical. Maybe Sebastian Hyde just wanted Ricky to get rid of some guy for him. And Ricky retorts, No way, man. He checked out, I'm telling you." Leo says, "Well, I guess we'll never know. He's dead." Ricky asks Leo, "So, can you help me get rid of the body?" Leo tells Ricky, "No, I'm not cleaning up your messes anymore. You never think ahead, Ricky. That's always been your problem." Ricky gets angry at Leo and tells him, "Hey, screw you. At least I'm trying to do something." And Leo tells him, "Well, don't. If I want your help, I'll ask for it." Leo then leaves. Ricky, he then contemplates his position. He smokes and he thinks, "This is what I get when I try to do the right thing." Ricky, he wonders, what the hell is he gonna do with this dead body? And he tries to remember where he hid the rest of his speed. Ricky thinks to himself, it's gonna be another long day. Alright, that's the end of this issue, and it's a little bit kind of a weird divergence to jump ahead in time, but it's really showcasing to us Ricky's mindset and how deteriorated he is, and how he's very impulsive, and how Leo is more thought out, and how Leo and Ricky's friendship is kind of over at this point. Issue 5, Cruel Summer Part 1 of 8, Night of the Hunter. This issue begins in June 1988. So the storyline we had in issue 1 with Teeg Lawless, well, this is 3 months after that issue. So we have to assume that Teeg Lawless successfully pulled that particular robbery in issue 1. He got the 25 grand to make up for his son Ricky's screw up, and we're sort of picking up from there. So now, in June 1988, we are introduced to 2 new characters sitting in a bar. The man is named Dan Farraday. He is a private investigator, and he has been hired to find this woman in red sitting in the bar a few seats over from him. Her real name is Marina Kelly, but she often prefers to go by the fake name Jane Hansen. Let's backtrack a bit and see how this Dan Farraday private eye ended up at this point in this bar by this woman in red. Dan Farraday, he was a Vietnam War vet. He saw all sorts of action overseas and it messed him up a bit. His platoon got lost in the jungle for a few days and was starving, and they were all so far gone by the end, they stumbled upon a village and just murdered everyone. Old men, women, and children, basically just farmers, not the enemy. Dan Farraday, he didn't take part in the slaughter. He hid in the trees while his platoon was mowing everyone down. Eventually in the night, Dan Farraday got shot by one of the woman villagers who managed to break free and steal a rifle, and she shot Dan twice, and then she got shot herself by one of Faraday's fellow soldiers. Dan Farraday, he recovered in the hospital from the gunshot wound for a while, and when he eventually recovered, he was sent home, and the war was over for him. Then in the 1970s, Dan, he became a cop. He wasn't a very good one. He hated his bosses and the political bullshit. He drank on the job. One time he beat a pimp half to death. Dan, he even took payoffs sometimes, bribes. He didn't consider himself a crooked cop. He was just doing what everyone else did. For all these negatives, though, there was one thing that Dan was really good at, and that was finding people, and he liked doing it. So when Dan eventually left the police force, he became a private investigator, and he would find people. That was his specialty, tracking down bail jumpers, teenage runaways, etc. Well, one day, Dan met a prospective client, a man named Kirk Windham. Kirk was a rich businessman, a real mover and shaker. He had a wife, but Kirk was in love with the woman in red. To him, she was known as Jane Hansen. Kirk, he was paying her rent. Well, apparently she stopped answering his phone calls, and he wants Dan Faraday's help to find her. Dan, he hated rich assholes like Kirk Windham. He figures if this girl got away from Kirk, she probably did so with good reason. But Dan needed the money, so he accepted the job. Kirk wanted Dan to find her so that he could talk to her, try to win her back, and convince her that she should come back and explain what she means to him. Dan Faraday was on the case. How was he going to find this woman? It's very interesting. We get to see his entire investigative process. Dan, he shows up to the apartment of this supposed Jane Hansen, the apartment that Kirk Windham was paying for this Jane. Dan, he looks around the apartment. There's no bills, no mail, no receipts, but there was a glass with red lipstick on it. Dan has a friend in a crime lab that maybe he could get a fingerprint off of that glass and tell Dan this Jane's real name. Dan, he picks up her phone and he hits redial on it, and the call went to a taxi company. So Dan knows that she took a taxi somewhere when she left. Dan, he goes to the taxi company, to the taxi dispatcher, and he pays the guy $50 to tell him where she went. The dispatcher looks in the records and tells Dan that her destination was a fancy upscale hotel downtown. Dan, he goes to the hotel. He pays the desk clerk $20. The clerk says he doesn't recognize the picture of Jane. The bartender was not helpful either. Dan, though, eventually he talked to the valet, and the valet gives him some answers. The night that Jane was at the hotel, she was talking to a guy that owned a Porsche Roadster. She seduced him, stole his valet ticket at some point during the night, and she got the Porsche Roadster from the valet and she drove off with it. Well, Dan, he looked up, where is that car now? And that car was found 3 days later, 300 miles away. Dan went to where that car was abandoned, and he found out that there were 2 motels nearby, and he figures that she probably went to one of them. Dan, he showed the night manager at one of the motels Jane's photo, and the night manager laughed. He recognized her. So Dan paid the guy $100, and the night manager showed Dan some security footage that was pointing to the room on the second floor of the motel here. He had taped all 4 days that she stayed here. Jane, while she was here, she seduced the man in the room across the courtyard. She was undressing in front of her windows, and then she bumped into him. And then she brought him back to her room to have sex with him, with the lights on, and the window curtains open, and the security camera captured it all. The night manager, he watched everything like a little pervert. Dan, he paid the guy another $20, and the night manager gave Dan the phone number of the guy that Jane seduced and banged. Jane, she ended up stealing this guy's car and all of his credit cards. So Dan, he tracked the guy's stolen credit cards and found out that she booked a motel room off of Highway 10. He was now about 1 day behind her. He was looking through the trash can of the motel room that she was staying at, and he found a pawn shop voucher ticket. So Dan, he then goes to the pawn shop, and the guy says that Jane sold him an emerald necklace. Dan recognizes the necklace as something Kirk Wyndham's wife would wear, and she would be pictured in one of the society pages in the newspaper. Dan figures that Jane stole the necklace, so Dan, he phones up Kirk Wyndham and tells him everything he's discovered so far. Kirk, he doesn't care that Jane stole from him. He just wants Jane found, and he wires Dan more money for his work. While Dan is waiting for the money transfer to be sent to him, he phones and checks in with the guy in the crime lab, the guy that he sent the glass to. Well, the guy from the crime lab tells Dan that he found a match for the fingerprints on the glass. They belong to a woman named Marina Kelly. So this is how Dan figured out that Jane Hansen is really this Marina Kelly. Dan has sent the various police records for this Marina Kelly. Marina Kelly has been in and out of trouble since she was 14 years old. Shoplifting, car theft, assault charges, etc. Dan eventually tracked Jane down, and he found her sitting in this bar. So he sat beside her, and he asks her if he can buy her a drink. Jane says no, she's waiting for someone. She shows no interest in talking to Dan. Dan tells her that he's a private investigator, and he's been hired to find her. He even knows her real name is Marina, not Jane. Jane says shit. Dan tells her to relax. He just wants to talk to her. So Dan buys her a drink and they talk. Dan, he's kind of betraying his client Kirk Wyndham right now. He's found Jane. He should just phone Kirk and claim his reward for a job well done and tell him where she is. But instead, he decides to indulge himself and talk with her. Dan asks, why did she run off on Kirk Wyndham? Jane is surprised that Kirk was the one that sent him. Really, Kirk? Well, screw him. That dickhead deserves a lot worse than me stealing some necklace. Dan asks, what did he do to you? And she explains that he mostly just slapped her around a bit, but the last straw was him putting out a cigar on the inside of her thigh. She would not be with him anymore after that. They talk some more, and Dan kind of feels for her. He wants to help her. Jane suggests that they go somewhere where they can get a good dinner and a bottle of wine and they can continue this conversation. Dan asks, I thought you said you were waiting for someone. And Jane replies, oh, I just said that to get rid of you, you know. So the two of them, they're walking through a parking garage on their way to Dan's car, when eventually Teeg Lawless jumps out from behind a pillar with a wrench, and he whacks Dan on the head with it. Teeg, he then whacks Dan a few more times, and before Dan is fully unconscious, he hears Jane yell, Teeg, stop it! He's had enough! Dan, he wakes up a few days later in the hospital. When he gets out of the hospital, he phones Kirk Wyndham and explains the whole story, and Kirk fires him. Kirk's pissed. Well, Dan tells Kirk that the girl is on her way to the East Coast, which is a lie. Dan, he doesn't care about the money anymore. He's become focused on this Jane woman. He is intrigued by her. He is infatuated by her. Dan remembers, before being knocked out, hearing the name Teeg. Well, a buddy on the force tells Dan that there is a guy named Teeg Lawless living down in Bay City. It's most likely the same Teeg that Dan had a run-in with. And this Teeg Lawless has a bad record. Assault, robbery, murders that cops couldn't make stick. Dan thinks that if that is who Jane is running with now, then she really needs his help. And lucky for him, a guy with a name like Teeg shouldn't be too hard to track down. So, this private investigator, Dan Farraday, is on the case, trying to save the supposed damsel in distress, Jane Hansen. Issue 6, Cruel Summer, Part 2 of 8, Song to the Siren. Alright, how did Teeg Lawless meet this Jane Hansen, the supposed love of Teeg's life? Well, a few weeks back, Teeg Lawless came to Center City to work a job with a man named Sheik Severin. It was a simple robbery. They wore masks, robbed a store, in and out in 3 minutes, and they stole 25 grand. They decided to go to a club to celebrate. They did some coke in the bathroom and they danced on the dance floor. And this is where Teeg saw Jane Hansen for the first time. He was staring at her from across the bar. She was so beautiful. And she came over to talk to them. Turns out that she was an old girlfriend of this chic Severin guy that Teeg was with. So she hung out with him the whole night. Teeg was kind of crushing on her hard. He hasn't smiled like this for a long time. Smiling like an idiot. She was tough, funny, and she made jokes at Chic's expense, which Teeg kind of enjoyed. At the end of the night, though, she left with this Chic guy, and Teeg was left alone in the club. It kind of ruined the night for him. None of these other women did anything for him, not like Jane did. The next day, though, Chic asks Teeg to help him out with something. Teeg says, why not? They drive north of the city to a vacation house near a lake. Turns out that this Jane stole 10 grand from Chic the night before while he was sleeping. And Chic is here at this lake house to kill her. Teeg, he follows his friend Chic into the house. They are walking around very stealthily. Chic has his gun drawn and he's looking for Jane. Eventually, though, Jane gets the jump on Chic. She was hiding in this room off to the side and she popped out and she shoots and kills Chic. Teeg Lawless, he turns around with his gun drawn and he aims at Jane. The two of them are staring at each other, both with their guns drawn. Teeg, he almost fired on her, but instead, he smiled. The same idiot smile he had on his face at the club the other night. And Teeg tells her, so, I guess things didn't work out with you and Chic? Maybe I can buy you a drink to take your mind off of it? Teeg, he points his gun elsewhere, and eventually so does Jane. She replies, your name was Teeg, right? From there, the two of them were in love. Teeg, for once in his life, was actually happy. They left Chic's body in the septic tank and got out of there. They drove to Santa Teresa and checked into a resort hotel. Jane, she liked the high life, and she spent money fast. For once, though, Teeg didn't really care about that. He just wanted to be with her. They would make love, and Teeg, he was falling deeper and deeper in love with her. Turns out they were in the same hotel, the one that was featured last issue with the Dan Farraday story. Well, Jane, this one particular night, she went down to the bar before Teeg, while Teeg was in the bathroom shaving his face. They were gonna meet down there. While Teeg is shaving, eventually a hotel employee tells Teeg that their credit card had been declined. They were using one of the stolen credit cards that Jane lifted last issue. While Teeg tells the hotel employee that he'll be down to clear it all up. Teeg instead, though, he packs all their shit that's in the hotel room, and then he puts it in their car in the parking garage. Teeg, he then goes to the bar to get Jane so they can get the hell out of there. But Jane was talking to that Dan Farraday at this point. So this is when this issue intersects with last issue, and we see the story from Jane and Teeg's perspective. Teeg, he was going to interrupt Jane and Dan's talking and get Jane out of there, but Jane, she gave Teeg a look at the bar that said, stay away. So Teeg, he stayed away. Teeg thinks that this Dan kind of looks like a cop, so it's probably for the best. Teeg, he waits in the parking garage, and eventually, Jane leads Dan Farraday through that same parking garage, and Teeg jumped out and hit Dan with a wrench, knocking him out. Teeg and Jane, they then drove off. Teeg tells Jane that their credit card was canceled, and they only have about 1 grand left now. Teeg says maybe he can pull some more jobs and get them more than enough money. They stop off at a diner, and Teeg phones up Tommy Patterson, and they discuss maybe pulling some new heists. Serious targets, though, the kind of jobs where you can take the rest of the year off. Tommy says he might be down for that. Tommy tells Teeg, though, that Teeg's son Ricky, has been crashing at his place for the last week. We see Ricky Lawless on the couch in Tommy's house playing video games with Tommy's son Leo Patterson. Teeg's landlord apparently kicked Ricky out and changed the locks. Teeg must not have been paying the rent. They even had the sheriff put up an eviction notice and everything. Teeg to this replies, shit. He tells Tommy that he's coming back to the city tomorrow and he'll take care of Ricky. Teeg tells Jane that the wheels are in motion, it's gonna happen soon. Jane says that's great. Teeg tells Jane, though, that he has a son, Ricky. Jane says that's okay, she likes kids. Teeg replies, yeah, well, you haven't met mine yet. Teeg thinks to himself, that frickin' kid is gonna ruin everything. Issue 7, Cruel Summer Part 3, Must Be This Tall to Ride. We see teenaged versions of some of the main characters we've spent some time with in other volumes of Criminal. We've heard they were all friends when they were kids, but this is the first time we're actually gonna get to see it. They are all playing Dungeons and Dragons. Jacob Kurtz is the Dungeon Master, and playing the game is Jenny Waters, Leo Patterson, and Ricky Lawless. Ricky is being a little bit of a jerk, though. Jacob is doing his best to be the Dungeon Master, speaking in character and being animated. He is playing the part of the innkeeper right now and trying to give the heroes some information. But Ricky, he just wants to stab the innkeeper in the chest. And Jacob tells Ricky, come on, man, play the game, right? And Ricky replies, I'm serious, let's go, Jacob. I'm ready to roll. Ricky's holding up his D20 dice, and Ricky continues, I'm using my enchanted dagger. It's 4+ against innocence. And Leo tells Ricky, enough, you're ruining the game. Leo, he tries to ask the innkeeper some info, keep the game going. But Ricky continues being a jerk. And Jacob gets angry with Ricky, and Ricky argues, hey man, my guy is chaotic neutral. I'm in character right now. And Leo to this says, oh, bullshit. And eventually, Jenny Waters, she gets up and leaves to go home. Ricky, he successfully ruined D&D this night. Ricky tells everyone to just chill. We can finish the game next week. Ricky, he asks Jacob and Leo if they want to go out and do something. Jacob doesn't. He's upset. Leo says that he should probably be getting home. Ricky calls them both lame. We have a flashback to a week ago. Teeg Lawless came back home with Jane and introduced her to Ricky. Ricky hated what Jane was doing to Teeg, his father. Teeg Lawless took Ricky to a fancy restaurant where Ricky had to get all dressed up in a tie. And Teeg told Ricky that they were moving into a new house, moving out of the place their landlord kicked them out of. And Teeg even said these words to Ricky. What do you think about that, champ? Ricky thinks, champ? Since when the hell does his dad say champ? Teeg, he was acting like a totally different person. He was smiling, which just looked wrong on Teeg. He even lit Jane's cigarettes. It all made Ricky sick to his stomach. Teeg's mean streak was still inside him, but Jane tempered it. Ricky, he didn't hate Jane though. Even Ricky had to admit she was kinda cool. She was also kinda hot, no denying it. But still, he hated what she was doing to his dad. For all of his faults, Teeg had been a constant in Ricky's life. Teeg's drinking and violence weren't even faults to Ricky. It was just what it meant to be a Lawless. Now watching Teeg with Jane, trying to be someone he wasn't, it made Ricky feel sorry for his dad. Teeg had always been this larger-than-life guy, a hard ass. This was the first time Ricky saw Teeg as human and stupid as he himself was sometimes, and that kind of scared him. Back to the present. Ricky and Leo have left Jacob's house from their D&D session and they start walking. Ricky is talking to Leo about his dad's new girlfriend. Leo asks how old she is, and Ricky answers, I don't know, maybe 32? Leo asks, is she hot? And Ricky answers, yeah, better than my dad deserves, that's for sure. And they're screwing all the time. Ricky talks Leo into breaking into one of the cars on the street there. Leo, he does so, and Ricky manages to find $4 in the car. They add it to the rest of their money and find out they have about $14. They decide to go buy some booze, but they are underage, so they need to find someone to buy the booze for them. They ask this blue-collar looking guy in coveralls. He tells them no. Tells them to ask the junkies, maybe they'll buy the booze for them. So Leo, he walks right over to these junkies sitting on a stoop, and he asks them if they'll buy some booze for them, and they can even keep the change. One of the junkies agrees to do it. Now Ricky, he is staring at one of the junkies that has a scar on his face, and the junkie asks him, "What are you looking at, kid? You got a problem?" Ricky answers, "No." Ricky, he's not sure, but he thinks he recognizes this guy with the scar. Ricky, he remembers back to his time in juvie recently, where there was a guy with a scar named Lucas there. While it's never explicitly said, I assume that Lucas sexually assaulted Ricky while he was in juvie. Ricky remembers this Lucas saying to him, "You're cute. I like you." At first, Ricky thinks that no, it's not the same guy. But eventually he thinks, no, it is the same guy. And that guy doesn't even remember me. Ricky, he tries to suppress the memory though, bury it deep down inside. Ricky and Leo, they get their booze and they go up on the rooftop of some building to drink. They discuss Jane and their dads having a meeting tomorrow to plan some upcoming job. It sounds big. There are some cops down on the street below. Leo tells Ricky to be quiet, but Ricky antagonizes the cops from the roof, calls them frickin' pigs. The cops eventually yell for the kids to come down off that roof, but Ricky, he throws a brick down on their car and yells at them, "Suck my dick!" Leo is pissed. He asks Ricky what the hell's wrong with him. The two of them now have to run away from these cops. Now this is when Ricky felt most alive, when he was running away from the trouble he created, running from consequences. It was when he felt most like his dad. Ricky and Leo, they're running from rooftop to rooftop. Ricky manages to make a huge 10-foot jump across to another building. He almost didn't make it, but he grabbed onto the side of the building and he climbed up. Leo stops himself though. He's not gonna make that jump. Ricky calls him a wuss, and Leo yells back, "Screw this, I'm going home while I still can." The cops are no longer chasing them anyway. Leo goes home. Ricky, bitter, angry, alone, he returns to his new home where Teeg and Jane are upstairs having sex. Ricky is annoyed. They're banging all the time. This new house, though, doesn't feel like home to Ricky. It's nicer than their old place, sure, but it's just some house they can't afford. It's someone else's life. Ricky decides not to go home tonight. He returns to Jacob's house and climbs in through the window. He apologizes to Jacob for ruining D&D earlier. He asks if he can crash here. Jacob says, sure. Ricky asks how that D&D session would have gone. What was the innkeeper going to tell them? Jacob, he explains all about it. Ricky, he's listening to Jacob talk about their D&D adventure and what he had planned. And Ricky, as he's lying down, listening, trying to sleep, he misses the more carefree days when he would have cared about things like this D&D. Ricky, as Jacob's talking, drifts off to sleep. Issue 8, Cruel Summer Part 4, Upon the Edge of No Escape. Teeg Lawless and Jane are meeting with the rest of their crew, and they are planning the heist that they will soon pull off. Tommy talks to Izzy Kurtz, who is Jacob Kurtz's dad. Well, Izzy Kurtz is a forger, just like Jacob was. Tommy asks Izzy to make sure those badges and IDs are ready for them by Friday. Izzy says, no problem. Tommy goes over the plan. Tommy is the brains, the planner, just like his son Leo was the planner in Volume 1, Coward. Well, Tommy, he's going over everything. In the room, there's Jane, Teeg, Izzy, a guy named Ringo, who I think is the same Ringo we briefly saw in Volume 7. There's also a bald, tough-looking guy whose name is Kurt. Tommy says that they should all meet here Friday night to go over all of the final details. After the meeting is over, Teeg leaves with this Ringo. They have to take care of some stuff. Teeg says he'll meet Jane back at the house later. Jane, she takes the subway and goes back home. She showers, she looks in the mirror, she dresses. She wonders to herself, why can't she help but feel that something is wrong? What has she missed? And she remembers the kid, Ricky. She hasn't seen Ricky for a while. She goes into Ricky's bedroom to check in on him. Ricky's not there though. Jane, she's looking around the bedroom. She wonders if Ricky's on drugs or if he's suicidal. Then eventually in Ricky's drawer, she finds ammo for a gun, and she smells Ricky's clothes and smells gunpowder from a recently fired pistol. So what is Ricky doing? Why does he have a gun, and why is he practicing shooting? She realizes that wherever Ricky is, he has a gun on him, and she is concerned. She drives across town to Jacob Kurtz's house, and she asks if he's seen Ricky. Jacob says no, but they were supposed to go to the arcade on Monday. But instead, Ricky got on the number 7 bus that goes downtown to G Street. G Street is a rough area, hookers and junkies. Also some bars that rich college kids like. Well, Jane, she drives down to G Street to see if she can find Ricky. Stop him from doing something stupid. She walks by some junkies on the street and she heads into a nearby bar called King Joe's. In the bar, Jane runs into an old friend named Rhonda. They talk for a bit, catch up. Eventually, Jane sees Ricky walking outside on the street. Jane immediately leaves the bar and follows Ricky. Ricky appears to be following some homeless junkie. Jane is wondering, why is Ricky following this junkie? Is he stupid enough to try to rob a junkie? He'll only get like $2. She realizes, though, that this is not a robbery. Ricky is trying to kill this junkie. The junkie goes to head inside a rundown, abandoned-looking building. Ricky raises his pistol, but he can't bring himself to shoot the junkie. Jane walks up behind Ricky and says, "Hey!" Ricky points the gun at her. He asks her, "What is she doing here?" And she answers, "I'm looking for you." She tells him to put the gun down, and she asks, "Who was that guy?" Ricky explains that he knew that guy in juvie when he first got there. The man's name was Lucas. Ricky, he doesn't say what happened, but Jane, she senses, and she figures out, she knows what happened. What this Lucas guy probably did to Ricky in juvie. She sees the look in Ricky's eyes. It was the same fear that she saw in herself at his age, before she took a straight razor to her stepdad and killed him. Jane tells Ricky, "Okay then, come on, stay close to me and keep quiet." They sneak inside this abandoned building, and they look for this Lucas, this scarred up junkie that did stuff to Ricky. And they find this Lucas passed out in an empty bathtub. And Jane figured that he'd already be passed out by the time they would find him, and sure enough he was. She asks Ricky, "Is that him?" And Ricky answers, "Yeah." Jane, she puts her hand over Lucas's mouth and stops him from breathing, killing him. It's much easier killing someone who doesn't fight back. Maybe too easy. Her and Ricky then leave, and they get into Jane's car and they go to drive home. They just killed a man together. Ricky tells her not to tell his dad, and she promises not to. In an effort to make Ricky feel better about just killing a man right now, she tells him, "You know, the Russians have 25,000 nukes aimed at us. We could all be wiped out in one big flash. So I figure, with all that imminent destruction waiting for us, that whatever we've done or whatever has been done to us, none of it means anything." I guess Ricky finds that comforting. Not really, but... Back over at that King Joe's bar, Rhonda phones the bar owner and says, "Hey Joe, remember that guy that was in here asking about Jane the other day? He said he was paying for information about her, right?" So this Rhonda at the bar who was talking to Jane a few moments earlier this night, well, she's apparently referring to that Dan Farraday, that private investigator who was around the other day looking for Jane. Issue 9, Cruel Summer, Part 5 of 8, Restless Eyes. This issue showcases to us Leo Patterson and the origins of his heist planning and careful planning, and we get to see him in contrast to the ever-impulsive Ricky Lawless. Ricky and Leo, they are hiding up in the ceiling of an arcade they usually hang out in downtown. They are going to rob the place. They've been hiding up here for over an hour. The manager of the arcade left about 15 minutes ago. Ricky wants to get down from the ceiling and start robbing the place. Leo says they should wait another 7 minutes. What if the manager forgot something and comes back? They have to allow for that. Ricky says he ain't coming back. Well, they both climb down. The two of them, they have the arcade to themselves. Ricky, he wants to get in a game of Galaga. Leo says, no bullshit, okay, Ricky? They have to be in and out of here in 8 minutes. We have a flashback to earlier that day in the Undertow bar. Gnarly, he was tending bar there, and Leo is hanging out, and Tommy and Ivan are talking. Ivan was the old man with Alzheimer's we saw in Volume 1, and he is friends with Tommy Patterson, and he also helped raise little Leo. Well, Tommy has that big heist coming up in a few days, and Ivan is asking Tommy if he can take part in it, even just a small part. But Tommy refuses because of Ivan's various drug problems. Tommy, he doesn't want to work with an addict, no matter how close he is to that particular addict. Tommy, he's willing to give Ivan any money he needs, though. Ivan, he's begging to be part of the job, though. He wants to earn his money. He doesn't want it to just be handed out to him. Tommy sticks to his guns, though. He asks Ivan, when was the last time you shut up? Until you get clean, really clean, the answer is no. Leo, he hated that his dad was so uptight with Ivan. He tells his dad that he should have gave Ivan a break. Tommy tells Leo, you think I like it this way? Leo remembers when he was a kid, and then the three of them would be down at the fairgrounds, lifting people's wallets, the three of them, a little pickpocket crew. It was one of Leo's favorite memories. After his mom died, Tommy and Ivan were all that he had. They were what meant to be family to him. Leo's dad, Tommy, is extra stressed out recently. Tommy, he's just worried about the upcoming score, and his mind is running down all the various ways it could go wrong. Tommy, he spent 6 months in jail once when Leo was younger, and Tommy always said he'd rather die than go back. Leo, much like his dad, was the planner of this little arcade heist. One day while he was in the arcade, he noticed the alarm keypad, and he saw that there was a poster right beside it. And on the corner of the poster, if you peeled it back, was the code to turn off the alarm. The manager of the arcade was a huge stoner, so of course he hid the code right near the keypad. Once Leo saw that, he sort of made a list of things whenever they were there in the arcade. How much money did the arcade keep? What day did they bring the money to the bank? How could they sneak in, etc. Back to the present with Leo and Ricky in this arcade. Leo, he sneaks into the arcade's office, and he opens the little safe box there, and inside is some cash. But when he looks at the amount of cash that's there, Leo says, shit, it's only $600. Not nearly as much as him and Ricky had hoped. Ricky asks Leo, how'd they do? And Leo tells Ricky the bad news, only $600. Ricky's pissed, that sucks, $600. Ricky says, you know, we should steal the Miss Pac-Man machine. Leo says, no way, that's not part of the plan, man. Ricky, though, he manages to talk Leo into it. He says, hey man, it's Jenny's favorite game, it would impress her. Leo doesn't think it would really impress her, but he decides to go along with it. It's stupid, but they would be legends if they pulled it off and stole this thing. They just need to get the arcade machine into this nearby van. However, as they are hauling that arcade machine outside of the building, they forgot about the security guard at the office supply place a few doors down. He notices the two of them trying to steal the machine, and he points his flashlight at them. Ricky and Leo, surprised, they drop the machine and it tips over and it breaks on the street. Ricky pulls out a gun and aims it at the security guard. Leo can't believe that Ricky brought a gun to this. The security guard is unfazed by the gun, and he whacks Ricky with his flashlight, and Ricky drops the gun on the ground. Leo, he is normally a nervous guy, highly tense, but when the shit hits the fan and he crosses that line of right and wrong, he becomes another version of himself, and all of his fears and anxieties would calm, and his eyes would go cold and calculating, and he could do whatever needed to be done without hesitation. Leo, he picks up that gun on the ground and points it at the security guard. He asks the guard, do you want to get shot? The guard backs away from Ricky, and Leo continues, "Okay, now step back and keep your hands up or I'm gonna shoot you in the leg." And the guard says, "Jesus, just get out of here, you don't have to do this." Leo tells the security guard, "There's a police station 2 blocks away, I can't just leave you here." He asks the guy if he has handcuffs. The security guard says no. Well, then Leo improvises and says, "Okay then, take off your pants and underwear and give them to my friend." And the guard says, "No, I'm not gonna do that." Leo tells him, "Or I'm gonna shoot you in the leg, it's up to you." So the guard removes his pants and underwear and gives it to Ricky. Leo tells the guard, "Sorry about this." Leo and Ricky, they then run away, and they eventually toss the guard's clothes when they get far enough. Leo's quick thinking here managed to help him and Ricky get away without any further violence having to happen. Leo and Ricky, they eventually make their way to a bridge, and Leo throws the gun into the water down below. Leo is pissed off at Ricky. Ricky's shenanigans and throwing caution to the wind almost got them both killed. Ricky, he wanted to play Galaga during the robbery. He wanted to steal the Miss Pac-Man machine. And he brought a gun and pointed it at this security guard. Ricky was dangerous. The two of them, they have a little argument, and eventually Leo leaves and tells Ricky to just screw off as Leo heads on his separate way. Issue 10, Cruel Summer Part 6, 2 Roads to Hell. We catch up with that Dan Farraday, the private eye. He is still trying to find this Jane Hansen. He has an old picture of her, and he's traveling all over the city, and he's asking about her as well as Teeg Lawless, whom he suspects has her. Dan, he is a little bit obsessed with this Jane Hansen. He fantasizes himself as saving her from this savage Teeg. Dan imagines him and Jane running off together. Dan Farraday goes to where Teeg Lawless used to live, their old apartment, the one that they got kicked out of. The landlord, though, he ain't telling Dan shit. He doesn't talk to no cops. Dan, he then goes to various dive bars looking for info. He ends up going to a strip club and asking this one stripper if she knows anything about Teeg Lawless. He offers to pay her $200. She tells Dan that her friend knows this man that he's asking about, and he'll meet him in the parking lot after they close down. Dan stupidly does hang out in the parking lot, waiting for this friend of the stripper that supposedly knows where Teeg lives. Instead, Dan is greeted by the club's bouncers that proceed to beat the shit out of him. Dan then returns to his motel room, badly beaten. He is starting to lose hope of ever finding Jane. He might not even be on the right track. Jane might be far away from here, away on the other side of the country maybe. But then, Dan gets a phone call from Rhonda at that King Joe's bar, a bar he visited recently looking for her, and she tells Dan that Jane was here the night before. So Dan, he knows he's on the right trail. He'll be finding her any day now. 5 days later, Ricky is at their mailbox at their new home. He's hoping to receive a letter from his brother Tracy, who is away in the army. No letter yet, though. Ricky asks his dad if he filed that change of address thing at the post office so that they can forward the mail here that's still going to their old place. Teeg says he thinks he updated it, he doesn't remember. Teeg and Jane, they have a serious talk with Ricky. Jane tells Ricky that once this next job is pulled off, the two of them, Teeg and Jane they're going to be leaving town for the next 3 to 4 months. And Ricky, he's going to go live with Tommy and Leo Patterson. They frame it to Ricky as like they're doing him a great big favor. Ricky is upset. He feels like they are abandoning him. He lashes out. Ricky, he yells at his dad. He says, "You're letting her make decisions about our family now?" And Jane, she tries to get a word in, but Ricky says, "F you." And then he says F you to his dad as well. Ricky also calls his dad pussy-whipped and pathetic. Teeg, his temper gets the best of him, and he hits Ricky and punches him in the face. Teeg, he then gets on top of Ricky and is beating him some more. Ricky, he manages to get a punch in or so on his dad. He yells at his dad, "I hate you!" And Jane, she is yelling for Teeg to stop. But Teeg, he just hits Ricky some more, and eventually Ricky passes out. When Ricky wakes up, he's in his bedroom, and Jane is tending to his wounds. Ricky asks Jane, "Why are you with him? Why him?" And Jane asks Ricky, "And who should I be with instead?" Jane, after applying some bandages and whatnot to Ricky, she tells him, okay, that should do it, trying not to get hit in the face for a while. Ricky asks her, why is she being so mean to him? And Jane answers, "I'm not, kid, I like you. You're just not part of the plan is all." Jane, she leaves. Ricky, he's angry. He's saying, screw the both of them. He hotwires the neighbor's car, and he drives to their old family home. He breaks into the abandoned house, and he looks through the mail that has been shoved through the door and is lying on the floor. Ricky, he's trying to see if his older brother Tracy sent him any mail. Maybe it got delivered here? No letter though. He didn't find it. Just a whole bunch of past due bills. Ricky goes to leave the house, but then he is approached by that Dan Farraday. And Dan asks Ricky, "What are you doing in that house? Do you know the people that live there?" And Ricky answers, "Yeah, why?" Dan shows Ricky a picture of Jane and explains that he is looking for her. And he asks Ricky if he's seen her. Issue 11, Cruel Summer Part 7, The Last Score. It is the day of the Big Heist. This is the heist that Tommy and the others have been planning and meeting about for the last several issues. They are robbing Bay City Arena on the night of Wrestle Madness, which I assume is like WrestleMania. There will be so much cash from all the fans buying food and drinks and whatnot. Maybe 200 grand, 300 grand, 400 grand, who knows? Maybe even more. This will be by far the biggest heist Teeg has ever pulled. They got this score from an inside man, a guy named Phil. Phil is the assistant manager of the arena. Phil, he manufactured a problem with the stadium's ventilation system, and then he talked to his boss and said that we need to hire a crew to come in and fix it. Told his boss it could be an insurance risk to not have this ventilation checked out. So, Phil, he brought in Tommy and his crew. Phil, he's gonna get a little cut of the heist if they manage to pull it off. So, Teeg, Tommy, and their team were all brought in as air conditioning repairmen. So they came in, pretended to fix this thing, and then they said, oh, it'll be a few more hours. And then before you knew it, the wrestling show started, and the stadium was filled with crazed wrestling fans, so they would pretty much be forgotten and be left alone to do whatever they needed to do. So the heist is slowly being put into motion, everyone is doing their job. Teeg, he is watching the wrestlers in the ring. He thinks that in another life, him and Ricky, they could have been, father and son watching the big show here. Ricky probably would have loved it. Teeg, he surveys the crowd. He thinks something is up. There are security guards everywhere. Teeg thinks that there's way too many of them, more than there should be. He thinks that maybe they're getting screwed over. Teeg, he goes to see Tommy in the mechanical room, and he tells Tommy that security looks like they're on high alert. He's not sure if it means anything or not. Well, there's no time to back out now, though. It's time to kick things into the next stage. Teeg and Tommy, they put on some gas masks. Around the stadium, Jane, she's been slipping firebombs into the trash cans around the arena, and they're all timed to go off at a certain moment. She'll be outside before they even go off. And the other two members of their heist crew, Kurt and Ringo, they're changing into their security guard uniforms, ready to walk away with all the money. A real security guard comes in and interrupts Teeg and Tommy. The security guard sees them in their gas masks and figures something is up, so Teeg whacks the guy in the head, knocking him out. Teeg. He thinks again, someone's snitching. Why is this security guy here? Well, it's too late to back out now, though. The fire bombs go off in all of the garbage cans around the arena. Fire alarms are going off. There is havoc. Crowds are just running away, trying to get out of the stadium. They're scared. Teeg and Tommy, they place some tear gas canisters down a vent that leads right into the stadium's counting room, where they've been collecting the cash all night. The clerks in the counting room, because of the tear gas, they're coughing, they're disoriented, they don't know what's going on. One of the security guards in the room crawls to the door to open it to get away, but he ended up just opening the locked door directly for Teeg and Tommy that were waiting on the other side. Teeg and Tommy, they bust into the counting room and they point their guns at everyone and they start removing all the cash and placing it in various duffel bags. Kurt and Ringo in their security uniforms, they show up to pick up some of the money and start heading out. Teeg and Tommy follow them. Phil, the inside man, the assistant manager of the arena, he is by the exit waiting for them all. Phil, who's worried, says, "Man, I thought something might have gone wrong." And Teeg replies, "It did." And he shoots and kills Phil. Tommy yells at Teeg and says, "What the hell?" Teeg says confidently, "That guy screwed us. Security was all over the place. It was some kind of setup." And Tommy asks Teeg, "What? Why the hell would he be waiting for us then?" And Teeg answers, I don't know." Tommy tells Teeg, "We were almost out of here without a shot fired, asshole." And Teeg says, "Don't get bent out of shape about it. This guy was a link back to us anyway. Now we're safe." The entire heist crew leaves the arena. It is chaos outside. Everyone is running away. They're trying to get to their cars and they're honking, trying to get out of there. So, the heist crew managed to just walk right across the parking lot, unnoticed. They have 3 cars in an alley across the street from the arena waiting for them, so they can all split up, drive their different routes to the safe house just in case. But for the most part, they appeared to have gotten away with it. Teeg is in the car with Jane, and they are driving. Teeg, he's still wondering if someone screwed them over. Why was there so much security? But as they're driving, Teeg starts to think that maybe they pulled it off. And it felt like maybe $500,000 in weight. It's a lot of money they're gonna get. Teeg and Jane, they arrive at the safe house, and the two of them kiss. The others will all be arriving soon. Teeg, he goes into the house. Teeg, he feels a strange feeling. Well, was it happiness? For a second, Teeg wondered if he'd ever get used to it. But then he saw an open window in the house. He notices that it's cracked open. He finds that a little bit weird, and as he turns around, he sees Dan Farraday there holding a shotgun. And Dan says, "Hey, remember me?" And then he shoots Teeg with that shotgun at point blank range. Issue 12, Cruel Summer Part 8 of 8. Kiss Tomorrow, Goodbye. This is the final issue in Criminal, the exciting conclusion. Teeg is lying on the floor. He is not dead though. Teeg wonders, why is he not dead? He got shot point blank. He feels his body and realizes that he was shot with rock salt. Why the hell was he shot with frickin' rock salt? Teeg, he gets up, just in time to see Dan Farraday leaving with Jane. Teeg, he stumbles outside of the safe house and sees that they are already in a car a block away and driving onward. At that moment, Tommy Patterson arrives in his car and asks Teeg, "What's going on?" Teeg runs to the car and tells Tommy, "He took her. He got Jane. He has my share of the money." Teeg, he gets in the car with Tommy and they begin speeding off and driving after Dan Farraday. Tommy asks, Who has her? And Teeg answers, "I don't know, just drive." Dan Farraday, when he shot Teeg Lawless, said, "Remember me?" Well, Teeg, he didn't even remember him. That's how unimportant this Dan guy was to him. In the car, Dan Farraday has Jane with him. Jane, she remembered Dan. She remembered their conversation in that bar that night. And Dan, he is blabbing to her in this car all about helping her and saving her. Jane, she hates men like Dan. Men who thought that they were the good ones, that they knew what was right for you. Those were the ones that ended up trying to strangle you when it all goes bad. The men that felt like they deserved you. Notice that Jane is actually handcuffed to the car here. Jane is looking at Dan and thinking about how he just killed Teeg, or so she thought at least. And now Dan, he's acting like he's this Prince frickin' Charming to her, like he saved her. In the car, she starts fighting him. She punches him. She's struggling. She's trying to get away. Teeg and Tommy are traveling in the car behind them. The car with Jane and Dan is starting to swerve all over the road, and they drive right through a red light. And a huge truck drives right through their car, and the car, it flips multiple times. And the money from the arena robbery that was tucked away in the trunk of the car, it explodes into the air, and the bills, they fly up into the air and they start floating down to the street like confetti. The car is totaled. Tommy and Teeg, they stop the car that they are driving, and Teeg gets out of the car and he is shocked. No way did Jane survive that. She's dead. Tommy tells Teeg, "We gotta go before the cops get here." Teeg says, "Yeah, okay." A few weeks later, they're all having a barbecue at Tommy's house, and Teeg is there and he's depressed. The love of his life, Jane, is dead, and it destroyed him. The kids there, Jacob, Leo, and Ricky, they're all playing kickball in the backyard, and Teeg, he's just sitting there defeated. Tommy asks if Teeg wants cheese on his burger. Teeg says, "Don't make me anything, I'm not hungry." Tommy tells him, "You gotta eat." Ricky, he sees his dad all sad and he feels for him. Teeg is just sitting there smoking, wondering about this Dan Farraday. Who the hell was that guy? Where did he come from? The paper said he was a private eye and they blamed the heist on him, even though him and Jane only had a portion of the money from the robbery on them. Teeg is thinking, rock salt? Why the hell did the guy shoot me with rock salt? Teeg asks Tommy, "Why did you shoot me with rock salt?" And Tommy says he doesn't know why, man. Teeg, he goes inside the kitchen. Ricky, he sees his dad go inside all sad. Ricky has seen his dad crying every morning since the robbery. Teeg, he just walks around the house like a zombie, and he's always drinking, but he's never drunk. Ricky decides to go into the house and talk with his dad. Ricky, he searches the house and eventually finds Teeg. Ricky, he feels bad because he was the one that told Dan Farraday where Teeg and Jane were going to be. Ricky is the reason that Jane is not here and why Teeg is grieving so much, and he feels terrible about it. Teeg sees Ricky and asks him, "I just don't get it, kid. Why am I still here?" And Ricky says, It's all my fault, Dad." And Teeg says, "What?" And Ricky continues, "I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I wanted her to go away." Next thing you know, Leo Patterson enters the house, and he walks in on Teeg strangling Ricky. Teeg might have even killed Ricky. Leo, he sees a pistol on the table in the room, and he picks it up and points it at Teeg. And Leo, he sees the ripples that will come from this moment. Neighbors are in the yard next door, so there will be no covering it up if he shoots right now. And the police will be here in minutes. And his dad, Tommy Patterson, won't let his son go to jail. He'll take the blame and go to prison, and he'll die there someday. And Ricky, this won't even save Ricky. It'll just be another thing that kills him slowly. Leo, though, he does it anyway. He pulls the trigger, and with that, the world explodes, and Teeg's head blows up all over the kitchen, blood everywhere. Tommy runs in and yells, "Leo, what happened? Oh my god!" Tommy tells Leo to give him the gun. Tommy tells Izzy Kurtz to take Leo and Ricky and get the hell out of here. Izzy asks, "Yeah, sure, Tommy, but what are you gonna do?" And Tommy replies, "Just go." Tommy then turns to his son and says, "Just go, Leo, go with Jacob and Izzy and go." Izzy and Jacob are in the front seat of the car, and Ricky and Leo are in the back with Teeg's blood all over them. This is the last memory Ricky and Leo have of the summer of 1988, sitting in the back of a car covered in blood, wondering how life can possibly go on. And that is the end of Criminal. Alright, that's it. The finale of Criminal. I thought it was pretty satisfying, although not perfect, though. I didn't love how this plot thread in issue 1, where Teeg had to pull off this robbery and get 25 grand, was never revisited, so that was a little bit annoying. And then we had that 5-year time jump, and we have that story with Ricky and Leo Patterson, which I thought was a good story and a good character building there, but narratively, I thought it was a little bit annoying to jump forward in time and then jump back in time. Anyway, the bulk of the Cruel Summer storyline I thought was really good. I liked how kind of each issue had its own little story and focus on certain particular characters. But I think there is a real lot of examples of the good writing we have in this series, with all these various characters and them having their moments to shine. And they're all these flawed characters, very complex characters. So Dan Farraday, the private investigator with this troubled past, and he falls in love with this woman that he barely knows, and he goes on this mission to save her, and he's so arrogant that he thinks that she needs saving and she doesn't want anything to do with him, and he kind of ruins everyone's life because of it. So I thought very interesting. Jane Hansen, she is just this serial criminal, but this beautiful woman that's used to using her femininity to get stuff from men, and she kind of gets hooked up with Teeg, and they have a very interesting relationship. Although I'm always wondering, is she using Teeg to get a better life for herself? Does she really love Teeg? Teeg seems to grow on her as the series goes on. We have Teeg Lawless, one of the most flawed characters in this entire series. Always very quick to violence, always such a hard ass, always beating his kids and drinking and whatnot. But we get to see him fall in love, which was very fun to see Teeg try and be happy. And I liked some of the moments between him and Ricky, seeing him try to be this father, but he's obviously a very shitty father. So I thought all that was very interesting. Ricky Lawless, a super flawed but very intriguing character. You know, he was in juvie and he got really messed up because of it, and now he's kind of angry with the world. I thought it was really interesting how the storyline with the Dungeons and Dragons, how Ricky, after juvie, he can't be a typical kid anymore. He can't enjoy the typical stuff that all of his other friends are enjoying. And it's just very sad for Ricky that he goes on this sort of tragic trajectory, his story. Even Jacob Kurtz, I thought it was interesting seeing some of him in this. I liked that he was this dungeon master that totally fits his character. And we got to see his dad, who's also a forger, so that was interesting. Leo Patterson, was great to see some more of him in this. And see his dad. His dad was the Big Heist planner, which was the role that Leo ended up taking on in Volume 1 Coward. And we even got to see Leo plan that little arcade heist, which was also very fun. So, lots of great little stories in here. We had that big arena heist, which I thought was very fun to watch go down. And then, of course, we had the big, epic conclusion where, of course, Teeg Lawless gets killed. And, it was pretty sad because he loved this Jane woman and then she ended up dying. And then you never saw Teague so depressed like that ever. And it really hit him hard. And then when Ricky told his dad the truth, you just knew that was not going to go well. So I thought that was pretty satisfying. So yeah, I'm going to give this volume a 9 out of 10. I thought it was pretty good. Not perfect, but there was a lot of really good stuff in here. And I'm really glad that I read the whole series building up to it and had all that fresh in my head so I could really get the most out of it. All right, from least favorite to most favorite, this is my criminal ranking. So least favorite, my heroes have always been junkies, which I did not cover. Then I would put Bad Weekend. Then Volume 3, The Dead and the Dying. Volume 7, Wrong Time, Wrong Place. Volume 2, Lawless. Volume 1, Coward. Volume 4, Bad Night. Volume 5, The Sinners. Then I would put Cruel Summer. And lastly, my most favorite criminal story was still, for me, Volume 6, The Last of the Innocent. And that is the one that sort of spoofs the Archie characters. That one's my favorite. But yeah, thank you all for watching. That has been my coverage of Criminal. Let me know your favorite criminal rankings in the comments. And I'll see you all next week for Sandman.